Decoding Disclosure, 500,000 Years of Time Travel for Salvation. Introduction, the decoding of our reality. In this document, we undertake a journey of discovery into the source code of our existence. We step out of the traditional trench warfare between religion and science and present a model in which both fields do not exclude, but rather complement each other. We approach reality not as a collection of coincidences, but as a structured system of information, energy, and vibration. This journey leads past 5 crucial anchor points that together form the foundation of a new, universal truth. 1. The BETH Hypothesis, a cosmic perspective. The starting point of this research is the presence of extraterrestrial civilizations, ETs. According to the BETH Hypothesis, benign ethics hypothesis, these highly developed groups are fundamentally peaceful. They operate as guides, supporting us in the transition to a mature planetary civilization. Their presence provides us with the context needed to finally assemble the fragmented puzzle pieces of our own history and technology. 2. CreaVolution, the unity of intention and mechanism. The struggle between creationism and evolutionary theory is artificial. Under the name CreaVolution, we describe one coherent system. Where religious sources describe the intention and the source code of the designer, science investigates the mechanism and the progression of the algorithm, evolution. In this model, evolution is simply the execution of a brilliant code. Wiki, evolution. Wiki, intelligent design, as a concept of structural construction. 3. The blueprint. The Kabbalah as a technical manual. The Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, is the oldest core of the Kabbalah, literally, that which is received. We approach this not as a mystical scripture, but as an operating manual. The Code, the Sefer Yetzirah, describes the 32 paths of wisdom, 10 numbers and 22 letters, as a mathematical model of frequencies. The Interface, the well-known Tree of Life functions as the Graphical User Interface, GUI, a visual map of the data. It is a system architecture that leads us from the bottom layer, matter, to the source, pure energy. 4. The E-theory, the science of vibration. The E-theory forms the practical translation of this ancient blueprint into modern reality. By defining music and matter on 3 axes, time, frequency, and resolution, a measurable grid is created. The parallels between the 32 paths from antiquity and the 65 building blocks, ores, from the E-theory suggest that we are looking at a universal language entrusted to humanity thousands of years ago to prepare us for the science of today. 5. Gematria, the calculator of reality. To complete the circle between the written word, the audible tone, and tangible matter, we introduce gematria, numerology. In the source code, letters have an exact numerical value. This allows us to mathematically link the vibration of information to the frequencies of objects. It is the tool with which we prove that language, music, and chemistry are different dialects of exactly the same system. The roadmap. During this journey, we leave the mystical mist behind. We treat the transmitted texts from the Bible, the Quran, and the Torah as simplified versions of a technological reality that we could not yet comprehend at the time. Where religion speaks of angels, this model recognizes energy forms. Where one sees the serpent as a deceiver, we see the flow of data and DNA that activates the system. We are preparing for a leap in consciousness. The Kabbalah is the zip file that we, with the help of our cosmic neighbors, are finally allowed to unpack. Part 1. The baggage. Why we are leaving now. 1.1. The paradox of the 21st century, divine gadgets, toddler-like quarrels. Imagine we have a time machine and bring a knight from the year 1200 to the present. He wouldn't believe his eyes. Not just because we fly and steal birds or carry the world's entire library in our pockets, the smartphone, but especially because of the enormous power we possess. We have the technology of gods. We can split atoms, rewrite DNA, and think faster with AI than any human brain ever could. But here's where it pinches. We call this the Paradox of the 21st century. The Great Stagnation. While our gadgets become exponentially smarter, our social and political systems seem to stand still in the mud of the 19th century. We use satellites that communicate at the speed of light to argue over land borders drawn on paper with a quill pen hundreds of years ago. Our morals, how we treat one another, lag miles behind our technology. Weapons as bars. Unfortunately, our weapons also fall under those gadgets. We have surrounded ourselves with an arsenal capable of destroying the Earth many times over. Instead of technology liberating us, we have turned it into a glass prison. We guard secrets from one another that could actually help all of humanity move forward. We invest more in perfecting destruction than in understanding the construction, the source code. The Great Filter. This brings us to an exciting scientific concept, the Great Filter. This is the theoretical barrier that every intelligent civilization in the universe encounters. It is the threshold where technological power becomes greater than the wisdom of the species. If a child finds a loaded gun, it ends badly. Humanity is now in that phase. We have obtained the matches of the gods, but we are still playing with them like quarreling toddlers in a sandbox. If we do not learn to drop our shoulders and use technology for unification instead of division, we will remain stuck before the filter. Then our time travel ends here. The question we will explore on this journey is there a signpost that helps us pass that filter? Does a manual exist that shows us how to synchronize our divine gadgets with a mature consciousness? 1.2. The BETH lens. Looking through the eyes of the neighbors. To escape the checkmate of our own quarrels, we must stop looking at our own feet and look up. The BETH Hypothesis, benign ethics hypothesis, is like a new pair of glasses. When you put them on, you no longer see the world as a place full of enemies, but as a neighborhood in a gigantic universe. No threat, but a mirror. E.T. is not here to trample us, but to show us what happens when you actually pass the Great Filter. They are the living proof that a civilization only truly reaches the stars when it stops internal wars. Hertz. Our cosmic neighbors work as helpers. They understand that we are in a survival mode, but with the BETH lens on, you see that their presence forces us to grow up. The shift. As soon as we accept that we are not alone, and that the other, whether an extraterrestrial or a human with a different opinion, does not have to be a threat, the walls of our self-built prison crumble. 1.3. CreaVolution. The peace between Darwin and the Creator. In the 21st century, we often act as if we must choose. Are you team science? Everything is coincidence in biology? Or team faith? Everything is designed. This struggle consumes energy and keeps us divided. CreaVolution is the peace treaty between these two camps. The model. Imagine that reality is a computer game. The creator is the programmer who wrote the source code, the laws of physics and biology. Evolution is the algorithm running within the game. The characters in the game evolve and adapt, but only because the code allows it. Reviewing differences. If we understand that evolution is simply the method of an intelligent design, the need to fight each other disappears. The link with BETH. A mature civilization understands that everything, from the smallest cell to the farthest star, is part of the same creative process. By combining these two concepts, BETH and CreaVolution, we clear out the biggest mental clutter in our backyard. We are now ready to open the zip file and look at the actual blueprints of our existence. Part 2. The map. The code behind the scenes. 2.1. Abraham's zip file. The oldest programming language in the world. Imagine finding a USB stick in a 3,000-year-old archaeological dig. The people of that time would likely only see a shiny piece of metal. Even scientists 50 years ago could do little with it. But if you have the computing power of a civilization that is 500,000 years ahead, you see it for what it truly is. A compressed file. A zip file. This is exactly how we must view the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of formation. Data instead of stories. Most ancient books are full of stories about kings and wars, but the Sefer Yetzirah is different. It is short, powerful, and extremely technical. It doesn't tell you that the world was made, it tells you how the world was programmed. According to tradition, This packet of data was received, Kabbalah, by Abraham. With the knowledge of that time, he could only describe it in the language of his day, letters and numbers. But with our BETH lens on, we see something else, the 10 numbers, Sephirot. These are the base states or dimensions of energy. The 22 letters. These are the building blocks of the code. Not letters to write a grocery list, but vibrations and frequencies that together form matter. The 500,000-year head start. Why didn't we understand this sooner? Because our science and morals were not yet advanced enough. 3,000 years ago, it was a mysterious religious book. Today, our science, quantum physics, is finally beginning to understand that everything consists of information and vibration. In 500,000 years, the ET standard, this is basic knowledge. Unpacking the code. If you unpack a zip file on an old computer, it crashes. For a long time, humanity was that old computer. We didn't yet have the processing power, our consciousness, to process this information without turning it into strange, magical tales. Now that we are on the threshold of space travel and making contact with our cosmic family, we are receiving the software update we need. We are starting to see that Abraham didn't just write things down. He recorded the universal syntax, the rules energy must follow to become an atom, a plant, or a human. In short, the Sefer Yetzirah is the source code. It is the text version of the universe. But what does that code look like when you run it? For that, we need a screen. We call that screen the Tree of Life. 2.2. The GUI of reality, the Tree of Life in 3D. If the Sefer Yetzirah is the dry programming code, then the Tree of Life is the monitor. In the computer world, we call that a GUI, Graphical User Interface. The visual buttons and icons that allow you to use a computer without having to type code yourself. From flat to spatial. The problem is that for hundreds of years, we have seen the tree as a flat drawing on paper. But that is a huge limitation. The 2D image, that is like a blueprint of a house. You see the lines, but you cannot live in it. The 3D reality. Imagine the tree as a Rubik's Cube. If you draw it on paper, you only see one side and can do nothing with it. Only when you have the cube in your hands, in 3D, can you rotate it, understand it, and solve it in seconds. The Sefer Yetzirah describes 3 axes, dimensions, that we must imagine within the tree. Space. Where is something located? Time. When does it happen? Consciousness, or soul. Who perceives it and with what intention? The buttons of the operating system. The spheres on the tree, the Sephirot, are not airy-fairy symbols. They are the parameters of our operating system. The bottom sphere is the hard drive, our tangible world. The top spheres are the processor and the power supply, pure energy and consciousness. The lines between the spheres are the fiber optic cables through which the data flows. Solving in seconds. The beauty of a 3D model is that you can see short circuits. If we now try to solve our world problems at the flat 2D level, war, money, power, we keep spinning in the same circle. We are stuck in checkmate. But if we make the tree 3D, with the help of that 500,000-year head start from the ETs, we suddenly see the fast routes. We see how we can straighten the cube of our society in one smooth movement. The tree is not a decoration. It is the tool to govern reality. In short, the Tree of Life is the navigation for our time travel. It shows us that everything is connected through a network of information. But there is one element in that network that has always been misunderstood: the serpent. 2.3. The serpent and the helix. Data cables and the risk of the code. In almost all ancient stories, the serpent appears. Usually, we are sternly warned about it. This is not without reason. In our 500,000-year time travel, we see the serpent not as a slithering animal, but as a symbol for the flow of information. The hardware, DNA as the helix. Look at the shape of a snake coiling around a staff, like the well-known medical symbol, the caduceus. Do you see the resemblance? It is the exact shape of our DNA helix. DNA is the hardware, the biological hard drive on which the source code of life is stored. The serpent is the movement of that data. It is the force that brings information from the top spheres of the tree, consciousness, to the bottom sphere, our physical world. Without this serpent, the tree of life would be a dead drawing without power. The warning. Knowledge is power. Why then does the Bible warn us so strictly? Because information is dangerous if you are not ready for it. The temptation. The serpent tempted man to eat from the tree of knowledge. Technically speaking, humanity gained access to advanced technology and knowledge, such as nuclear fission or genetic manipulation, before we had the moral maturity to handle it safely. The hacker of the system. Just as a computer cable can carry both good software and viruses, the energy flow of the serpent can also be destructive. This is the opposing force. Yin and yang, construction versus entropy. In the universe, there is always a balance. Syntropy, construction, the force that makes cells grow, music harmonize, and drives us toward the stars. Entropy, decay, the natural tendency of everything to fall apart, rust, or be forgotten. In the Bible, this is often depicted as evil or the fall. But scientifically speaking, it is erosion. The serpent is the path along which these forces travel. If we let the serpent crawl low, focused only on power, fear, and survival, then decay wins. But if we let the serpent's energy climb up along the central axis of the tree, then we use the data for construction and unification. The ET conclusion. The warning in the holy books was a security protocol. The serpent brought us the downloads of 500,000 years of knowledge, but we were like toddlers trying to operate a supercomputer. The result was chaos. However, now that we are learning to look through the BETH Hypothesis, we understand that we do not need to kill the serpent, but to tame it. We must reconnect the flow of information, our technology and DNA, to the correct source code, that of peace and cooperation. Part 3. The Rhythm, the Science of the Future. 3.1. Everything is music, turning on the sound of existence. Now that we have examined the source code and adjusted the monitor, it is time to turn on the sound. Because let's be honest, a computer without sound and image is just a dull box of iron. Reality is not meant just to be understood, but to be celebrated. It is about Eden, delicious food, love for one another, and music that touches your soul. But how do we fit that deep human experience into a technical model of spheres and lines? The E theory as a user-friendly UI. Let's face it, that tree of life is an impressive antique instrument, but for modern man, it is not the most convenient interface. My E theory is actually a modern update of that old UI. It is much more user-friendly because it connects directly to something we all understand: music. In the E theory, we use 3 axes to place everything in the universe, and the beauty of it? They fit seamlessly onto the 3 axes of the 3,000-year-old Sefer Yetzirah. E theory, music. Sefer Yetzirah, the code. What does it mean in your life? Time, the rhythm, the sequence, the when of your experiences. Frequency, space, the pitch, the place, the vibration of matter, like the atoms in your food. Resolution, consciousness, the depth, the sharpness, the soul with which you look at the world. Music for the soul. If you understand these 3 axes, you see that a delicious meal or a beautiful song doesn't just happen. It is a perfect alignment of these axes. A low resolution means you are living on autopilot, survival. A high resolution means you enjoy every detail, every flavor, and every encounter, living. The Symphony of Eden. In my model, everything is vibration. An atom is a note, a molecule is a chord, and you are a unique melody. The ETs, our cosmic neighbors, have understood this for a long time. They do not see the Earth as a political battlefield, but as a stage where the music currently sounds a bit out of tune. By using the E theory, we learn how to tune our own frequency. We stop producing noise, conflict, and fear, and start composing harmony. That is how we translate the source code and the GUI into a beautiful life. By realizing that we do not live in a machine, but in a symphony. In short, the E theory makes ancient wisdom practical. It puts the sliders in our hands to turn our world back into a paradise. 3.2. The three axes, from black and white to 8K color. In today's world, we often feel like we are stuck. We live in a reality that sometimes feels gray, dull, and even frightening. If you compare it to music, we are currently living on a 2D sheet of paper. We see the black notes on a white field, and we try to follow the rules, but we don't really hear the music. It is a flat, limited experience of what life could be. My E-theory is here to transform that 2D sheet music into a multi-dimensional symphony. The game changer, resolution. We've already discussed the axes of time and frequency, but the third axis, resolution, is where the real miracle happens. Resolution is the depth of your perception. Imagine you have spent your whole life watching an old black and white television with lots of static. You can see that there are people on the screen, but you miss the sparkle in their eyes, the color of the sky, and the details of the landscape. Low resolution now. We only see the outside. We see differences, borders, and problems. It is a grainy 2D experience that causes fear because we don't see the big picture. High resolution, the future. This is the upgrade to 8K Ultra HD in color. Suddenly you see that everything is connected. You see the source code behind the matter. Fear makes way for wonder because you see the beauty of the construction. Help from the advanced realms. We don't have to do this alone. Our helpers, the HEARTS, helpers from extraterrestrial advanced realms that support, offer us this 3D opportunity. They already live in that high resolution. For them, reality is not flat text, but a living, vibrating ocean of color and sound. They reach out their hands to help us sharpen our own receiver. With my E-theory, I try to make a small contribution to this universal translation. It is an attempt to bring science and the soul back together, so that we don't just read the notes, but actually start to feel the symphony. Back to the real. The goal of this higher resolution is not to escape the earth, but to become real again. To experience the taste of an apple, the warmth of a touch, and the depth of a conversation as they were meant to be, in full, multi-dimensional glory. We step out of the shadows of the 2D world and into the full light of reality. In short, the three axes are the tuning knobs of your consciousness. By turning up the resolution, the world changes from a frightening labyrinth into a magnificent stage. 3.3. Gematria for beginners. The equation of perfection. We have heard the music and seen the colors, but how do we know it fits? Why does a certain chord feel so perfect, or a conversation so essential? That is because the universe is not just a work of art, but also a masterpiece of planning and execution. In the world 500,000 years in the future, there is no difference between a poem and a formula. This is where Gematria comes in, the calculator that connects everything. Language is mathematics in disguise. We often think that language is just an agreement to understand one another, but in the source code, the Sefer Yetzirah, letters are much more than that. Every letter is a number, and every number is a vibration. Language equals mathematics. Words are actually sums of energy. Music equals language with emotion. Music adds the color and the emotional value to that mathematics. When you speak a word, you are actually sending a small packet of data with a specific value. Gematria is the method to measure that value. The connecting sign. Everything must fit. In my E-theory, we use these numbers to make the music measurable. If the mathematics of a word, gematria, exactly matches the frequency of a tone, music, then a perfect description, PMD, is created. This is why plans and executions that fit give us such deep satisfaction. It is the transition from it'll do to perfection. It is the difference between an out-of-tune guitar and a symphony tuned exactly to the universal standard. It is the proof that we do not live in chaos, but in a system where every sign counts. The measuring stick of the future. Our helpers, the HEARTs, use this mathematics of the soul to build worlds and maintain harmony. They see that a word like peace or love is not just a shout, but a technical algorithm that, if executed correctly, can literally change reality. With Gematria, We make the journey from believing to knowing. We see the invisible lines that connect language, music, and matter. Everything becomes measurable, everything becomes logical, and above all, everything fits. Part 4. The destination, 500,000 years ahead. 4.1. The Type 2 civilization. Freedom beyond the gray clouds. Sometimes it seems as if we are in a bad dream, a dream of quarrels, scarcity, and a constant checkmate in which no one truly wins. But the truth is simple. Above the thickest, darkest cloud layer, the sky is always blue. A Type 2 civilization is a humanity that has learned to fly above those clouds. No more exploitation. In our current world, Type 0, everything revolves around milking. We empty the earth, we fight over oil, and we even try to squeeze each other for profit. In a Type 2 civilization, that is over. Infinite energy. We no longer need to milk the sun or drill the earth to destruction. We have learned how to draw energy directly from the source code of the tree of life. The universe is energy, and we have found the plug that fits into the socket of reality. Free and abundant. As soon as energy is free and unlimited for everyone, the reason for 90% of all human conflicts disappears. The great responsibility. But beware, free energy sounds like a fairy tale, but it is an enormous test. If you are given the power of a god, you must have the wisdom of a sage. Ethics over technique. In this phase of our time travel, technique is no longer the problem. We have solved that. The real question is, how do we handle it? True wisdom. Without a moral compass, infinite energy would lead to total destruction. That is why the BETH lens, benign ethics, is so important. A Type 2 civilization is a civilization that has chosen wisdom over power. Awakening from the veil. We see now that today's quarrels are actually growing pains. We are being prepared for this leap by our helpers, HEARTs. They show us that the blue sky of a peaceful cosmos awaits us as soon as we stop fighting over the shadows on the ground. We are moving toward a world where we no longer must in order to survive, but may in order to create. We become the gardeners of our own Eden, armed with the code of the universe and the heart of a mature species. In short, Type 2 is the civilization that has passed the great filter. We have solved the Rubik's Cube and discovered that the prize was not gold or power, but harmony and free energy for everyone. 4.2. The universal tuning. Your place in the symphony. We have reached the end of our time travel, but actually, this is only the beginning. We have seen that the blueprint is ready and that our helpers have already set the door ajar. But the most important question remains: how do we step inside? The UPATM transition, tuning the world. In music, every instrument must be tuned before the symphony can begin. Our current world sounds out of tune because we are all on our own, sometimes aggressive, frequencies. The UPATM, Universal Peace and Tuning Method, is the tuning fork of the future. The transition. It is the transition from conflict to harmony. The root. It is the decision to see the E-theory and the BETH Hypothesis not just as abstract ideas, but as practical roots to drop our shoulders and start sounding pure again. The power of your yes. This is not a journey that happens to us. It is a journey we choose. The cosmic family forces us into nothing. Access to the Type 2 civilization and the restored paradise is an individual choice that leads to a unanimous decision. You, the reader/viewer, are the most essential factor in this entire system. In quantum physics, we know that the observer determines what reality does. This means concretely, as soon as you decide to step out of the checkmate of fear and division, the algorithm of the world around you changes. Your indispensable yes to a shared future is the final click that solves the Rubik's Cube of our civilization. Your role in the multidimensional symphony. You are not just a spectator in the universe, you are a co-composer. Your unique vibration, your life, your love, and your wisdom is a note that no one else can play. If you decide to tune your instrument, yourself, to the source code of unity and peace, you help all of humanity to get past the great filter. We do not bring our fellow humans and the inhabitants of the universe back to paradise by building new gadgets, but by raising our consciousness to the full 8K resolution of the heart. The music is on. The signs are correct. The rest of the symphony, we write that together. Final conclusion. The expiration date of the old world. We have reached the end of this travel report, but we are on the eve of the actual execution. During our journey of discovery, we have seen that the puzzle pieces from the ancient Sefer Yetzirah to the modern E-theory fit together exactly. The expiration date of 2026. Let's be honest, holy scriptures like the Bible were intended as necessary packaging for a deep technical truth. But every package has an expiration date. In the year 2026, that date has been reached. The metaphors of the past no longer suffice for the challenges of today. We must open the packaging and choose the actual core message. Love as the highest frequency. Sacred areas. No war in our blood and spirit. In this transition to disclosure and unification, we must draw boundaries. Some things must remain sacred, which literally means sealed off or set apart. Our blood and our spirit. These are the carriers of our life energy and our connection to the source. These must never again become battlefields of technological or ideological warfare. Inviolability. The path to paradise requires the recognition that the human soul and biology are sovereign. The choice is yours. Our journey has shown that the great filter is not insurmountable, but that we must shed our pre-disclosure warlike traits. We have the means, BETH, E-theory, UPATM. We have the help of the He-arts, and we have the blueprint. The only thing missing is the collective realization that love is not just an emotion, but the most efficient mathematics of the universe. Let us play that symphony together now. Hans J.C. Bakker, March 2026, the Netherlands.